My title is Significant of Significance. So as you may know, significance part of an NIH grant is the part to determine the quality of being important of your work, which means the significance section is a critical component to used by reviewers to evaluate the potential impact and value of the proposed research. To make it simple, that is in the significance section, you want to mention that why your study is important and why should NIH support your work. So you need to convince the reviewers and also the NIH officers to show like your work is very important. You solve a very critical problem. Your approach is feasible, etc. So as part of the rigor of the prior research, this section is supposed to address first the strengths and weakness of the prior research. But one thing you want to remember is that we do want to downgrade the previous studies. There are many studies maybe have been done before, but we do not want to downgrade the previous studies. Instead, we want to figure out the weakness and the gaps in the previous studies and how this weakness and gaps impact the health research or impact health of certain individuals in the community or in different populations. And then based on private research, you want to introduce your ideas and discussion of the benefits and the impacts of your work. So this is a logical flow. So you want to do some quick literature review and understand the research problem, what is the research gap, and then discuss the potential benefits and the impact of your work. It's very like the introduction part of a research paper, but this part is need much evidence to support your work. So there are a couple of different things we want to emphasize in significance section. The first is it should clearly explain why the proposed research is important and how it will advance scientific knowledge or improve human health. Second, it should include a clear statement of the problem and its significance, a discussion of the current state of knowledge, a clear explanation of the potential impact of the proposed research, and discussion of the innovative aspect of the proposed research. Also, you want to emphasize that it is important to use clear and concise language throughout the significance section and use headings and subheadings to help reviewers navigate the section and make sure that the writing is well organized. So typically, we want to show the reviewers that this section is well written, it's concise, the logic is very clear. Typically, the reviewers can go through this simple structure, can understand your research problem. Don't make them to dig into it to find the things you want to emphasize. Just make it simple, easy to follow, and follow the logical structure that people can easily understand your proposal. Because the time each time the reviewers need to review a couple of different grants, and they have no enough time to go to detail for each of the grant very detail. So you want to emphasize the things by using headings or subheadings in your significance section. So regarding the structure, there was typically three key structures in the significance section. The first part is the introduction, which means we begin by introducing the problem you want to address, and you want to provide relevant background information to help reviewers understand the context of the problem and its importance. This is typically the first 1 or 2 paragraphs of the significance section. So typically you want to mention that, okay, we find the problem, and this problem is critical for health. Um, the consequence of the problem is huge. The burden is higher, so you want to address the problem. And then you want to say, okay, explain why the problem is significant and how it is relevant to human health or scientific knowledge. You want to provide evidence to support your claim about the significance of the problem. This is typically the second paragraph of the significance section. And then you want to review the current state of knowledge. You want to describe the current state of knowledge in the field and how the proposed research will build up on this knowledge. So in this part, you want to identify and highlight the research gap in your area and where previous research has been limited. And then you propose your research to address this kind of gaps, to address the certain problems, to understanding the problem better or solve the problem. And then you want to emphasize the potential impact. You want to emphasize the impact of your proposed research on human health or scientific knowledge. Explain how your research will advance the field and improve the understanding of the problem. This is typically like the paragraph like 3 to 4 in the significance section. And then once you propose your ideas, you want to mention that, okay, your proposed idea, your research aim is feasible. You want to emphasize the feasibility. You want to address the feasibility of your proposed research, explain how you plan to conduct research and what results you will lead, and make sure to emphasize that it is feasible to conduct your study by using the existing resource or the resource you want to get from NIH. At the end, you may want to have a conclusion section, and not all people have this section, but in this section you want to summarize the significance of your proposed research and its potential impact. You want to emphasize the importance of addressing the problem and how your research will contribute to the goal, how this will align with the NIH mission or the NIH research priorities. So one thing you want to remember that the significant part of the grant application is the opportunity to convince reviewers that your research is important and significant. You want to tell the reviewers that you identify the key problem, and the previous studies have the limitations, and your proposed study can address this significant problem, which may improve the health of the people of certain populations. You want to be sure to provide clear and compelling evidence to support your claim and make a strong case for your research. So another thing I want to emphasize that, in your significance section, you may need to review a large number of papers, literatures, previous publications. From these previous publications, you clearly understand the key research problems. Don't just think about research problems by yourself, but instead go back to literature to check, whether the previous literature support your aims, your research goals, whether like this problem is significant, etc. Use the previous studies as evidence to support your claims. There are a couple of different tips for writing the significance section. So you want to clearly state the problem, usually at the first of 1 or 2 paragraphs, starting by defining the problem or gap in your knowledge, and emphasize its importance. Usually for the significance section, we have 5 to 8 separate paragraphs. The page limit is usually like 1 to 1.5 pages. Each paragraph focuses on one point. Use highlights headings or subheadings, use numbers, and provide reference to support the statement. You want to highlight the impact, explain how your study will advance the knowledge, improve health outcomes, and you want to link your research to NIH mission, collect your research and to NIH priorities, as I mentioned before, to demonstrate its relevance and the potential for translation into health benefits. You also want to justify the list, provide a strong rationale for why the research is timely and necessary, supported by the existing literature or preliminary data. That's why you want to review a lot of literatures to understanding the existing literature well. And if you have any preliminary data, you want to emphasize that in this section, you want to use clear, concise language and include measurable outcomes. So discuss and anticipate results and how they will address the problem, emphasize potential benefits. Regarding the measurements outcomes, this should be later on in the approach section, you should clearly have a table or have different lines to define the outcomes and how this will be measured. And in here, in the significance section, you want to emphasize that you want to use the measurable outcomes to show how you actually address the problems. So this is basically the main body of the introduction part. I will also give you a case, to review how we actually the real NIH grant proposal will looks like. How we'll use this structure and tips to guide us to prepare for the significance section. As I mentioned before, significance section usually include 5 to 8 different paragraphs. Starts from the problems and then significance of the problem, the gaps in the literature, and how you propose the research. This is a grant study. It's a grant proposal from Dr. Joe Tucker, who is a moderator for today. This is a grant we have been done in study. This study is about how to use paid-forward approach to improving gonorrhea uptake, testing uptake among MSM in China, and how to address the AMR issue in these settings. So you can see from here, we use the highlights and also the headings to mention what we will discuss in each of the paragraph. For example, the first paragraph is introduction of the problem. We mentioned that gonorrhea is common among MSM China. We mentioned that the prevalence of gonorrhea is high. It's about 12.5%. We use the literatures to support the problem is significant. And in the second paragraph, we also mentioned the significance of the problem, which is AMR issue. The AMR is a leading challenge for gonorrhea control in China. It has high MRC, greater MRC rate. For example, like 18% of the isolations can be determined to be have AMR. So this can be potential challenge to the country or to the province or to the country or to the region. And then we want to introduce the current stage of the problem. You can see from here in the third paragraph, we introduce what we have been done, what the previous researchers have been done for AMR. There was uncertain about the relationship between expanding the screening and the development of AMR, and why we want to emphasize the research gap, the knowledge gap, and why this knowledge gap may impact the health research in the future, or how this will actually impact us to understand the problem, to solve the problems in the community or in the in health system. And then we propose our idea. We introduced the paid forward approach. In here, you can see that we used a figure to show the paid forward approach. Okay, because this is a new approach. We want to make use concise, clear language, or use figures to show the reviewers that this is a simple proposed intervention. This proposed intervention is clear, state defined, and you want to mention that this intervention is innovative. It has the potential to address the problems. After that, you want to use another paragraph to emphasize the feasibility and the potential impact of the introduced approach. For example, in here, once after the introduction of paid-for approach, we introduce them our like previous research, prior knowledge, also preliminary data on how actually paid-forward have been used to improving STI testing in community settings or in hospital settings, etc. How actually we will leverage the resource of the public health system to get this work done, to show that this work is feasible. It can be well conducted in the community settings or in the public health system of the province. You want to convince the reviewers that this is durable. This approach is innovative. This approach has a potential impact to address the knowledge gap. And then we will have a summarization paragraph to summarize the potential impact of this proposed study and how we can actually address the problems. So this is typically the quick introduction of the significance section of the NIH grant. And we may have lots of problems, and we can go some of the problems one by one. Okay. Let me go to the questions section, Q&A. And the first question, what is the difference between the introduction of the significance section and the problem statement often included in proposals? So this two part is kind of similar. For the problem statement section, I think we usually including in the AIMS page. Especially the first paragraph of the AIMS page, we want to mention the problems. And in the AIMS page, the first paragraph of the whole AIMS page, it might be very limited. Space is very limited. You may do not have enough space, do not have enough time to clearly mention the problems and use potential evidence to support the potential problems of your proposed study. So that's why we want to use, in the significance section, we want to use another paragraph to introduce the problem again, but not repeating. The problem is the same, but in here you might want to, have more literature to support your work. Especially, you might want to emphasize the potential impact of the problem, and that's why you want to introduce your proposed research. This two part is kind of similar, but it serves different aims. For example, the problem statement for the AIMS page is introduce the problem. That's the whole thing for AIMS page. You want to AIMS page is kind of overall summarization of the whole study. That's why it's kind of similar to the abstract. Is more summarizing the problems in one page, and also the proposed aims in one page. But for sequence section, we'll go down to detail to use evidence to support everything. The second is, could you please clarify what you mean by NIH priorities? I'm wondering whether a proposal that addresses the significant local or population-specific problem will still be considered, even if it does not align directly with the current NIH priority areas. Typically, we want to, in any NIH proposal, you want to emphasize how your study is aligned with the NIH priorities. This will be shown on the aims page. Also can be in the significance section of the grant proposal. You may want to say, okay, this problem is local problem, specific problem, but you always want to say that this is global problem. This is a problem of NIH research priorities. Given the current environment, this problem becoming more and more important. NIH is trying to reducing their funding, improving reducing the number of grants that were funded, and focusing on the key research priority areas they want to emphasize. If your problem is not aligned with the NIH priority areas, the significance would be lower. I mean, the score on significance would be lower. This may impact the overall score of your application, and which will downgrade the possibility of being funded by NIH. So that's why in any NIH applications, you want to emphasize that your proposed research is aligned with the NIH priorities, and you want to address the problems by addressing the concerns of NIH. I hope this question will answer your concerns. The third question is, how long should a typical literature review be for proposals? This how long? I mean, I don't know. Is the time issue or like how long the context will looks like? Typically, for the literature review, we want to review the most recent publications, studies, to emphasize that this problem is a current problem, it's not a past problem. We want to using existing knowledges that is available to show that this problem is significant at this moment. It is important to address the problem. Don't use the literatures published many years ago, especially the epidemiology data. If you emphasize this, cite this reference, the reviewer say, okay, this is an old problem. It may not relevant to the current issues. It will not reflect the current problems. So that's why you want to use the most recent publications or literatures to support your statement. Usually, if you use like older reference or literatures, this will typically measures relevant to measures, but not to the epidemiology data or the problems that statement. So you want to use the most recent publications. The next question is, when we apply for an NIH grant to conduct research in our origin country, should we highlight impact of our research for the USDA? So typically, yeah, this is a good question for many global health research. Why NIH should, support the work in your country instead of out of the US? Why should we conduct global health research? This might be a local problem in your country, but how this, the lessons learned from this grant can be used in the global settings or in the USA. What is the potential impact of your study beyond your local region to the global and to the USA? And we really want to emphasize this in our grant proposal because many of the times the reviewers, if they are very conservative about like global health research, they may have this question: why this is relevant to the USA? Why should the USA support your study in your country, not conduct a study, support a study in the USA? So you want to address these concerns when you write the significance section or also the potential impact section. We usually emphasize this in the potential impact section to see, okay, if this problem can be, or the or summarization section at the end of the whole proposal, we want to summarize that, if this problem is successfully addressed, the knowledges, the methodologies we gained from the study can be used in different settings to address different problems, not only in the global, but also in the USA. We want to emphasize this. That next question is, okay. This is about the slides moving. We already finished the presentation part. We are just, answering any questions. And if you have any questions, please use the Q&A section to show your questions, and then we can answer the questions one by one if you have any. I saw also there was some previous answered question. Joe mentioned that for one of the questions, should the feasibility section include grants and chart of the proposed activities? Joe mentioned that for clinical trials, there's a separate timeline section, including the US grant. NIH grant is including this in the NIH grant is good. Another section is question is with regard to the slides. The slides will be available, and the recording will be also uploaded to the system of the section. You can easily get it, from our website. The next question is, okay, this question has been answered. Do you have any additional questions? I did not see too many questions today. I know this part, for the introduction of this part is really simple work, but get these things done by writing the significance section very well is a problem, because, for the introduction of NIH, they typically just use the several lines to introduce how you will actually prepare this section. But when we start to write the proposals, there are many things we need to consider. Especially, you need to spend lots of times to review the literature to understand the problem very well. Also, you want to use the different tips to highlight the things you want to emphasize.
Thanks, Raymond. There was another question that just came in about using generative AI. I don't think it's sort of focused on the significance, but it's not a bad topic. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think if you want to use AI, you might want to use AI to help you to organize your whole section more like logistically, make people more easy to understand, make the languages concise and clear. But you do not want to rely on AI to do the literature review with you, to have claims about the problems, etc. Because many of the things, if we want to go to AI, you will see that the data is not available. Actually, the many data they cite is wrong, the references are wrong. You can use AI as a tool to support you, but mainly it's you who write the grant instead of the AI. The AI is a tool. It's like a word. You want to use the AI to improve in your grant proposal, but mainly it's you who will propose the idea, who will propose that why this will be significant, and and it's you who are like addressing certain problems instead of AI, especially for human health research. If it is not an AI-based study, use the AI as a tool is fine, but usually we want you to like focusing a grant proposal writing, also the significance section. Yeah. I see another question at here. What is this topic similar with the purple coal logo? Sorry, I cannot understand this question. What is
Yes, Waymin. The person is referring to last week's session during Prof. Juliet's session
yeah.
on innovation. She taught us about the purple cow and analog. So
Analog.
I think the person is trying to ask a similarity. So they are quite different. Abdisa, this session is on significance, which is quite different from the innovation section.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Yusuf. For the next question, is grant writing endeavors by NIH by applied for ELIZA funding providers, or it is specific to NIH only? So typically, the things we introduced here is tailored for NIH grant application, but I think the same skill can be used for any grant proposal writing. For example, for the significance section, it may not show in many of the grant proposals. This may not require for many grant proposals, but this can be easily tailored to the introduction part of many grant applications. In the introduction part of other grant proposals, you want to introduce the problem, review the literature, introduce your proposed idea, how your proposed idea is feasible to address a problem, and what is the potential impact. This kind of logical flow can be easily adapt to any other grant, even the other grant may do not have a significant section, but they have similar sections, I think. The next question, does the significance section differ by different grant types? No.
Wei-Ming, sorry, just for the last one, the other kind of related question that comes up a lot is if you develop, if you kind of come up with a research proposal for one funder, is it okay to submit the same idea to another funder? And I think this is also a point of confusion that it's I encourage people to take there's a couple of different strategies. One is to have like exactly the same idea and pitch it to different funders and realize that the likelihood of two proposals both being funded is pretty low. And obviously if you had the same idea funded, you'd have to tell both funders and then you'd decide to either keep, which one to keep. But I do feel like coming up with 10 different ideas for 10 different research calls can be really difficult. And I think, yeah, what the person was most focused on was what you responded to, Wei-Ming. But I just wanted to add that in. Over.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Yeah. The next question is whether this differ by different grant types. Typically, no. For any NIH grant, we want to do the similar things for the significance section. So we want to emphasize the problem as a consequence of problem, the knowledge gap, the proposed study, measures or the approach, and also what is the potential impact. But sometimes, like for some of the grants, the most of the grant is 12 pages, but for some of the grant made 6 pages, or some of the other grants may even longer. You may want to have a little bit short structure to tailor, for example, for K20 R21, it will be 6 page. Probably you will only use a half a page to emphasize the significance. So it's but you want to follow the similar structure. The next question is when stating the alignment with NH priority, do we have to mention NH in the text? For NH grant, we usually will do like that. We'll clearly set our research is aligned with NH priorities. Then we'll mention which priorities and also cite the priorities stated by NH directly. So in this case, when the reviewers or NH program officers go through your proposal, they will say, okay, this is align their goal, because they will send your proposal to different review sections. They need to find a home for it. They will determine whether this is like align with which priorities and should be sent to which section for review. So yes, you should be clearly state that this is aligned with NH priorities and which priority, and also cite the priority showed by NIH. Typically, you can find the research priorities on NIH website. You can go through them and find the priorities, and then you use 1 or 2 lines to state that. Typically, we do not need to spend too much space for it. Usually, 2 to 3 lines are okay. The next question is, what are the differences in the extent of the research plan section between R01 and K43, for example? I think the research plan section is typically similar, but K43 is a career development grant. For career development grant, it is a little bit different from direct NH R01 grant. For the K43 research plan section, you might want to, develop your own like mentoring plan, your own like who will mentor you, what kind of skills you want to develop, etc. That's specific for K grant, not for R grant. So this is a little bit different. But for the research proposal section, what you will do, that'll be very similar, I think. The next question is, how can I have access to the already short lectures? I think it is already online. You can just easily go to our website. You can find the recording or the slides from the previous presentations. You can go through it one by one. We already have like 4 to 5 different sections. You may want to spend some time to catch it up. And the good thing is each of the sections are a little bit different. They are not linked together. So it is fine if you missed some of the previous presentations, but you can continue to attend our webinar to get more knowledge about the future sections. The last question is, could you please share your general advice for someone applying for an NIH grant for the first time, particularly regarding aligning with the funding priority and the overall proposal preparation? If you're the first time writers for NIH grant, you may need to spend a much long time to prepare your proposal. First of all, you might need to spend like couple months to to write the Ames page, revise the Ames page, and also review the literatures very well to clearly understand what is your research problem, what you will do, and especially you want to discuss with the people who write the NIH grants before to get some suggestions from them. Our webinar will provide some advice to you, but more importantly, you want to find a writing group or senior people who have experience in writing NIH grant to help you on that. And then once the Ames page is done, you will start to write different sections The good thing is if you can find an example of a previously funded NIH grant, that will be very helpful. That will help you to understand, the overall structure. Currently we have different webinars, and each webinar is focusing on different sections of an NIH grant. But if you want to put them together as an overall proposal, you need to improve the cohesion between different sections. Integrate different sections into a whole story. You do not want to separate them. Also, if you want to have a same like previous senior people who have experience in writing an NIH grant to help you to like review your proposal, that will be also very helpful, because they will, this is like a mock review. They'll find out problems and give you feedbacks, etc. Especially, you need to remember that, if you're the first-time writer, the likelihood of being funded is also a little bit lower. But the good thing is, if you are early career researcher, NIH has a priorities to promote the fundings among early career researchers. The funding rate may be higher than general like senior people. So you may also want to take advantages of the early career researcher role. Hope this will answer your question. The next question is, when you get grant scoring, do you get the results by section? If yes, how many points or what percentages does this matter to get a grant? Each of the section will get a separate score independently, and the overall score will be putting together based on the score of each section. And for each of the section, you will, later on you will get a pink sheet. The pink sheet will give you the weakness and the significance of each of your weakness and strengths of each of your section. For example, if I review your grant, for the significance section, I will go down the things you mentioned. I will mark up what is the potential weakness of your section and what is the strength of your section, and then I will give you an overall score. This score is part of the overall score, and we currently we have 3 different scores. They will be added together to get your final score, and then your score will be ranked to see whether you reach the fund line. Is currently the rate is very low. If you pass this is the first step, and then if you pass the score is high enough, it's over the 50%, they will have the council meetings to discuss each of the proposal to see whether the reviewers will change the score later on. If not, the final score will be determined, and this score will be used to determine whether you will be funded. Do you have a proposal writing template? I think what we have been introduced here is kind of template. The thing is each people may have a different kind of template. Also, NIH website may have some template. You may easily get some of the things they have been showing on the template. We do not provide template because different people may have different ways to organize their own NIH proposal. We usually mention that this will include different sections, but for each of the different sections, the template may be different. Okay, so that's why we typically not provide any template. The next question, was a shared previously template. That's from NIID from NIH. If you want to use it, you can easily use it. But usually, like this template will only mention what are the potential sections and what is the you should mention in the potential sections. Any other further questions?
That was great. Thank you, Wei Ming. Fantastic.
And one more. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
We can break now, and then next week we will be back and focused on writing the approach section. So thanks again to everyone who joined us. The recording for this will be available on the Grantathon website, and next week we'll be hearing from Professor Nadia Samagudu about the approach section. So thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you all. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.